Join me as I dive into research to see if reading really boosts socio-emotional skills. So I've been thinking a lot lately about school violence. And if you are in the United States, you probably have seen the news story about the teacher in Newport News, Virginia, who was shot in 2023 by a 6-year-old who's now suing the school system. Really affected her health and well-being. And she's no longer teaching, which I totally understand. And unfortunately, this type of thing should be really rare. It should be almost unheard of in a civilized country, but unfortunately, that's not the case. So research shows that 7% of students, according to the CDC, have reported that they have been threatened with a weapon or either threatened or injured by a weapon. Concerning to me also is that of students, high school students, and this is again probably underreported, but 9% of high school students have missed school in the United States because of safety concerns. In other words, they didn't feel safe enough to go to school, so they didn't go to school. And that's really a striking number. And it makes me think about the truancy problem we have, where many kids are not attending school. There's chronic absenteeism, and some of the schools that I have worked at in the past have actually had lockdowns where weapons have been caught on campus. So this is just really personal to me. We're becoming a very violent society, and it's not only a physical threat that this is happening, but it's also a psychological threat, and it's an emotional, educational threat, because no one's going to want to go to school when there's so much violence. And there's also other factors that are going into student well-being that are very concerning. So 1/3 of high school students have considered suicide, according to research. And as a response to this crisis, there's been a lot of talk recently about socio-emotional skills. And I believe I was in graduate school the last time when I was working my PhD when I first heard this term. So it's only been in about the last 10 years or so that this has become a big thing in education. And it's become a huge thing where there's this idea that children have to learn socio-emotional skills. And it's to the point now where some schools are focusing on this, and we have counselors and advocates saying that that should be the primary reason for school, is to help students learn how to cope in life rather than academic skills. And I talk about this a little in other videos, that this is concerning to me because school is supposed to be a place of academics, but on the other hand, we are having all these crises with children who are having major problems, who are disrupting school often, who potentially could be violent. And one thing that is kind of being overlooked in this is the way that academic and socio-emotional skills can work together. There's this idea that there's socio-emotional skills on one side and there's academic skills on the other side. And you have to kind of choose. And many times socio-emotional is now being prioritized in school just to help the students in the school survive, because we do have so much going on that is negative. But I'm going to talk a little bit about reading and literacy and how particularly reading fiction can help to build socio-emotional skills. So to learn anything, whether we're talking about math, science, social studies, reading, you have to have an emotional connection. And that's one reason why socio-emotional skills are being emphasized so much, because many students just don't have that anymore. They have what we call apathy, which is just not caring potentially about their work and not potentially caring about others. And we know that bullies, people who show bullying behavior, picking on other people, sometimes even physically hurting other people, and of course using language that hurts other people. Psychological bullying is becoming an epidemic, and it's been a problem for a long time now. And students who are bullying, who tend to use who tend to pick on other children, who maybe even physically will bully, do things like hurt children because they're smaller or because they are a different ethnicity sometime or different gender. We know that bullying comes from a lack of understanding and empathy. It's a lack of caring about other people and realizing that other people have feelings that need to be acknowledged. And we know that from the research. Reading fiction actually builds empathy. So in other words, when students read fiction, read stories that are made up, that are not true necessarily, narratives, they will build empathy. They will start caring about others more, and they will start showing more high emotional intelligence and better socio-emotional skills. And different reasons why they believe that this is true, why this is proven to be true, that reading fiction helps to build empathy. And nobody really knows, based on brain research, why this is, but empathy is activated while reading fiction. In other words, when you read about others and you see how other people live, and you develop empathy, you develop understanding about others. And so this has been proven that reading fiction does improve empathy. And empathy in our society in the United States is kind of getting a bad name lately. There are people, religious people, people who call themselves Christians, who say that empathy is a sin, it's a bad thing. Even though Jesus was probably the most empathetic person in history, if you read the Bible and you go by that. Elon Musk has said that empathy is not good, that it's a danger. So there's this idea in our society that empathy is bad. So it's more important than ever that students have empathy, so that we can reduce these bullying skills and we can build socio-emotional intelligence, because in our world, unfortunately, it's not being taught at home or in society. Research shows that 1 out of 5 students are bullied in schools. So, and it's also shown that empathy can lead to decreased rates of societal problems that are very prevalent in our society, like racism, sexism, and anti-Semitism, which is prejudice against Jewish people. That all of that can be helped by learning empathy. So reading is not only good for academic reasons, it's good for socio-emotional reasons. And again, I think this is something that's being really overlooked in our debate over socio-emotional and academic learning. Obviously, it's not a cure-all. I don't think that's going to stop all school violence. But anything that we can do to reduce bullying, to reduce school violence, to help students have empathy is a good thing, even if it just helps a little. And I do believe that reading fiction is one way to do that. So I would love to hear from you. So please let me know. What do you think about this? What do you think about empathy and socio-emotional skills in school? And how do you think that reading and academics in general can work with socio-emotional learning to help students? I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep learning.